Welcome to the Nomad Summit Podcast, your go-to resource for digital nomadism, remote work, and building a more intentional, location-independent life. My name is Palle Bo, and in this episode, I'm joined by Will Campbell, a communication strategist, organizational development practitioner, facilitator, and longtime remote worker based in Orlando, Florida. Will has been working remotely since 2009, long before Zoom calls, work from anywhere policies, and digital nomad visas became part of the mainstream conversation. Now he's involved in something he calls Atlantic Focus Voyage, a transatlantic remote work retreat at sea, bringing digital nomads and remote professionals together for deep work, peer learning, collaboration, and community. In this conversation, we're going to be talking about why freedom alone isn't always how remote workers can build better structure and connection, and why a cruise ship might actually be the one for more interesting places to rethink the future of work. So Will, you've been working remotely since 2000. So Will, as I mentioned, you've been working remotely since 2009. That's a long time.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. So I actually was working with a federal grant, state grant that was housed at a university in Florida, and they supported basically educators across the state and the southeast of the United States. And so even though we were housed at the university and we had offices there, most of our staff was all over the place. And so, yeah, there was a little bit of travel, but there wasn't a whole lot of need for me to go into an office. And so I had the opportunity to work from home, to travel when I went to go see other staff, when I went to go do visits, and just work pretty much from anywhere. And it was a different experience as someone who spent a couple years in the public school system teaching and then went on to work regular corporate jobs to be able to have that flexibility and freedom. And then I decided, I was in my 20s then, my early 20s, and I was like, I don't want to ever go back. And so that has always been a priority when I have looked for employment. It has been difficult at times before COVID. I mean, this was back in the early 2000s and in early teens to find a role. And I've been very fortunate and very lucky that in my entire career, aside from just a couple years where I was, and this was actually post-COVID, where I was working for a couple different agencies, that I've always been remote. And It was interesting that when COVID happened and remote became a thing, everyone was stressed out and everyone was like, how do we make this work? And to me, it was another Tuesday.
It's like, welcome to my world. Yeah. You have to work from home? Yeah, so?
And what was great was it also positioned me as a leader and someone who could manage those remote teams and who had those engagement strategies and can do the professional development and can do the scaffolding and figure out, okay, how do we do this? And even then, right now, my profession, of course, is I work in communications, PR, learning and development, and strategy, really focusing a lot on nonprofits and mission-driven organizations. And so I was actually able to help a couple different organizations survive COVID by helping them to manage their annual events in a virtual format, which was very interesting and very cool. And a lot of scared people and a lot of hand-holding. Is this going to work? Is it going to be successful for us? Are we going to be able to continue our mission? And it worked out. But it's been kind of fun, as I guess you could say, an elder nomad, if we want to call ourselves that, to watch all of these people discover how you can really make an intentional life being a remote worker, being someone who is not tied down.
Yeah.
I see a lot of people think that the nomad lifestyle is I have to work for myself, or I have to be a creative, or I have to be something. And really trying to shift that mindset is it's wherever the Wi-Fi is, wherever you're able to do the work. And luckily, I mean, we're seeing it now where a lot of corporations are really doing that return to office mandate. And that's unfortunate because the studies are out there showing that productivity is not impacted by a geographically diverse workforce or a remote first company. And so a lot of people are seeing that they can be more intentional about their lives and being more intentional about having a great work-life balance and a great quality to their life by able to travel and get those experiences. And I think personally that actually brings back a benefit to your employer, right? To have that different perspective, to be able to see different parts of the world or different communities or have those different experiences than the same thing that everyone else has. I think that can really provide to an employer.
Yeah. And come to think of it, it wasn't until you started talking about that, I actually beat you with a couple of years, because in 99, I was living in a part of Denmark 4 hours away from Copenhagen, and I really wanted to work for this Copenhagen production company, but I didn't want to move to Copenhagen because my kids were going to school where I was living. So I reached out to them and say, I want to work with you, and you should hire me, but I'm not going to move to Copenhagen. I want to work out of my own office. And thank God he had an open mind, so he just said, sure, we can do that.
There you go.
And then apart from a couple of years as a radio manager where I actually had to show up for work, and then I started my own production company in 2007 and working from home again. So, I've been doing it a lot too. Huh. Interesting. I hadn't really thought of it. I didn't see myself as a nomad. I was not traveling. I was just able to work from wherever I wanted. And that's kind of what inspired me to become a nomad in 2016.
Absolutely.
Anyway, William Campbell, welcome to the Nomad Summit Podcast.
Hello. Welcome.
Let's get to know you a little bit better. You have a base, right? You have a base in Orlando, Florida.
Yes, of all places.
So you're not a full-time nomad, but now you're next door to Disneyland and all of that fun stuff, and the good weather and the snowbirds and all of that.
Yes.
But tell me a little bit about what it is that you do.
Yeah, so I have my PhD in organizational communication. Basically, it's learning how to make sense and how to make meaning. And for my entire career, I did mention earlier that I started in the public school system. I'm the product of two teachers, and they said we would support you in anything except teaching. And in my senior year of college, I'm like, no, I want to be a teacher. And I realized why my parents didn't want that for me, because I have too big of a heart, and it was a little bit rough my couple years of teaching that I did. And so I started working for the Department of Education on that grant that I had mentioned earlier, and really found my love of continuous learning and development in communications, PR, telling a story, in strategy and operations. And really my focus took a lot with nonprofit organizations, mission-driven organizations, those type of groups that are out there doing something meaningful and purposeful. And that has been pretty much the through line of my entire career. And it wasn't until about a year ago where I was fortunate enough to say, hey, I'm actually going to do this full-time for myself, as opposed to working for a particular organization. And I go in and do engagements with companies that are out there, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah. So back to the whole work from anywhere and being a nomad. Even though you have a base, I know that you go on trips. Tell me a little bit about how often you put your laptop in a bag and go and work somewhere else.
Honestly, any chance I can get. Whenever I need that reset, like you had mentioned, I'll jump on a deal on a cruise or a quick flight, because Orlando is a great hub.
Oh yeah.
And whenever I honestly get the chance, I'm gone. And when I'm not, while I do have a great home office set up and I have the ability and it's very comfortable, if I'm still here in Orlando, I'll just go out and about, and head down to wherever. I'll head to the beach. I'll head to. It really doesn't matter. It's for me, work is where the Wi-Fi is. It's cliche, but I love it. And so, I would say, in this past year, I've probably been, trips and on the road and out of my home base, probably about 200 nights. Just to, and part of that has been work travel, but part of it is also just I want to work from someplace different and get that fresh perspective.
Yeah, yeah. So I would say you're a nomad, or at least a location independent.
Location independent, yeah.
But tell me about the times that you just find a quick deal on a cruise, and because there a lot of those are going out from Fort Lauderdale and Miami, and
yeah.
I bet if you can be flexible and just jump on one of the last tickets, I guess you can get some good deals.
Very, very much so. So, very fortunate to in Orlando, we've got Cape Canaveral, which is 45 minutes east. And then, south, you've got Fort Lauderdale and Miami, both. And then on the West Coast, you have Tampa. So we do have a lot of different ones, and it kind of depends on what your vibe is, and it depends on what you're looking for. I mean, not all cruise lines are, I would say, ideal for someone who needs to find a corner and work while they're on a sailing. But, it depends on your goals. And I've found that I really am focused. I love the brand Virgin Voyages. Yeah. They are, first of all, they're adults only. And, they're a relatively new cruise line. They came out right after COVID. And, they recognized and had the foresight to recognize that people combined work and play all the time. And they knew that, people are digital nomads and remote workers. And so when they were designing their spaces and their ships, they were very intentional about making sure that there was ample places on board, that it was very easy for someone to find a quiet place to get some work done. Because, as weird as it sounds, being able to just change your scenery, even the smallest change or the smallest change in your routine, can really give you that brightened, freshened, click in your brain to re-energize your thinking and to find some clarity. And so I love that. I've done 9 of them since last August.
Whoa.
Because it's just a real simple, easy weekend that you can do, right? They include Wi-Fi. They include so much on board, and you can get some really deep focus work done, and then, enjoy the rest of your afternoon with what I like to call adult summer camp.
Yeah.
With all sorts of things. They're very culture forward, experience forward driven, as opposed to sort of like, okay, hey, we got the water slide, we got the this, we got the that, we got, all these typical cruise things where they really curate a different experience that is some perspectives. And you meet a lot of nomads and you meet a lot of remote workers. It's pretty insane the number of people that are set up in the grounds club or set up anywhere, and they're just like, doing. So it's interesting and it's fun.
Yeah. So now you're doing something yourself called Atlantic Focus Voyage. And
yes,
I feel there's a story there, and I bet it started with, so I walked into a bar.
Yes, actually. So I was on a particular sailing. And first of all, I want to say I don't work for the brand. I don't work for Virgin. I don't. But I was on a sailing, and they have a place called the Grounds Club. When you're in that space, it's almost like you're in a Starbucks. There is the work tables. There is places to work. There's outlets everywhere. And, a couple morning, getting my morning coffee in the morning. And there are people that are there, typing away and doing the work. And so you meet some people. It was a solo voyager, and I'm hanging out with these people. And, one evening it started with at the bar, right? We were at On the Rocks having a drink before dinner. And we were talking about a lot of different things that is out there for nomads and remote workers, about, the opportunities to upskill themselves and their professional learning and the networking and the collaboration and building the community, right? Because, even when you work for an organization that might be remote, everyone is elsewhere. It's hard sometimes to build that community, and it's nice to have that in-person meeting sometimes. And so we started puzzling around some ideas, and, one of which was, we should design an actual experience for remote teams to be able to make this a team building thing, right? They spend their week in office collaboration time together on board, or what about what if we did some sort of, conference or ability to where people can come together and support each other in their work, right? In that accountability, but also provide some learning. And then, the biggest question that came up is like, well, what could you build in 5, 7, 8 uninterrupted days if you had that opportunity? and we were looking at repositioning cruises. And usually those trips are super affordable, beyond affordable. You're getting 14 to 16 nights on board. Everything's included. You don't have to worry about a thing. And it's 8 uninterrupted sea days where you're just at sea. It's a slower pace on board, and you have time to deep work and focus and things. And so we said, what if we do a cruise? And what if we put it out there for all of the remote workers, digital nomads, especially people who wanted to go from the United States over to the Mediterranean, right? Because it goes over and stops in Barcelona, which is an ideal spot because Barcelona has a digital nomad visa. And that can be your home base. And you don't have to worry about the Schengen zone and everything else that's there. If you want to spend a summer or longer, going through the Mediterranean and Europe, figuring that out.
You can do that as a U.S. citizen being in the Schengen zone more than 3 months?
Yeah.
I didn't even know.
Yeah. So Spain has a digital nomad visa. And so if you use Spain as your home base, your 90-day clock only counts if you spend the night in that country. So you can go Spain and you can leave and go to a Schengen country and spend a couple days there and then make your way back to Spain for a little bit and then go someplace else. It resets that clock a little bit, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
If you're being smart about things and you make Spain a home base, you can very easily spend a little bit longer than you typically would without having to worry about that clock ticking, which is really awesome. And so we're trying to get, a couple different scenarios together on how that works and figuring out the best way to maximize. But, Spain is a huge digital nomad haven right now. They have the visa that's very easy to apply for and very easy to attain. A lot of people go there and then they'll maybe pop over to Croatia, to Split. There's a couple different places, but tend to be Barcelona tends to be a really strong hub for especially US-based nomads, which is really kind of cool.
Yeah, Barcelona is great. So it sounds to me like you're not only doing the 2-week cruise, you're also kind of planning some stuff after.
That is a definite possible add-on, right? We're helping people to decide, okay, well, where do you want to go next? Hopefully the goal is to get people to collaborate and maybe buddy up with somebody if they want a travel buddy to move forward. But, we're going to have a couple different people on board helping us with the content itself. One of which is we have someone who is an expert in all of the messy things that aren't Instagram about the digital nomad lifestyle, like visa considerations and your tax implications and banking and all of this kind of stuff. So we're pushing all of that together in one of the breakout cohorts that we're doing on board, which is really kind of cool. So we're kind of like providing some support and trying to, kind of get this hive mind going in this cohort, if you will, really coming back to that idea of what could you build if you really sat down and you focused and you had some like-minded people around you.
สวัสดีค่ะ
When you get a good idea, sometimes it's done before. A lot of our listeners, they would probably think, hey, is this the same that the Nomad Cruise are doing?
To be honest, we didn't really see the idea until we started, fleshing out this and figuring out, okay, how would this position with other Nomad events? And so we did see the Nomad Cruise and, of course, Nomad Summit, which is great. And we were like, okay, what's going on? And so we're not trying to replace either. I think it's part of the broader movement, but really we're trying to focus on a different need in the remote work and the nomad ecosystem.
Yeah.
Nomad Summit is a gathering point for the community around ideas and stories and building your business and lifestyle design and connection, which is good.
Yeah.
And I think, the Nomad Cruise itself is a definite proven travel experience, bringing people together with the talks and the shared adventure aspect. And I think where this sits adjacent to both is that there's a little bit more of a specific emphasis on actually remote work systems and that deep work on board. It's really using that crossing on the transatlantic as a container for focus and momentum, right? Of course, I mean, people are welcome to participate in as much or as little as the content that they want to. But the idea is that, you're going to sit there and you're going to become really embedded with these people in a cohort for 8 solid days. And you're going to bounce ideas around. One of the sessions that we have is the situation room, where everyone has the opportunity to bring in like their biggest pressing problem. And they get 15 minutes to have all the people in the room to try and give them perspectives and to figure out what that problem is and how to resolve and move it forward, right? We're bringing in a lot of just different content about building a better work-life balance and moving forward. And I think it's going to appeal definitely to nomads, but the larger remote work community. I think there are a lot of people who are remote workers. They don't think that they could be location independent. I work from home, right? And they don't look at, vacationing or taking trips and working while they're traveling. That's sort of like a dream for them. And I think this is where it is. So we're not better. We're not a competitor. We're the same ecosystem in the same shape.
Yeah.
But just a little bit of a different aspect to what we're doing. We look at this as all of these things are helping to improve location-independent people who want meaningful in-person connection.
Yeah.
And so by looking at doing a slightly different version of that with this transatlantic crossing, it's less around that constant movement and more around like taking the time to focus and the structure and peer learning, intentional professional momentum, while getting you over to Spain and the Mediterranean to continue on a little bit more nomadic lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so I think the use of time is a little bit different for us and what's on here.
Yeah, so more focus on deep work, remote work systems, peer learning, and practical outcomes.
Yeah, like we keep going around. We could say, what could you build or clarify or actually move the needle forward on a project or what it is you're trying to do with your life when you had those 8 uninterrupted sea days with the right people around you, right? Uh-huh. That's sort of like the lane we're trying to go for this. We're really trying to focus on, hey, we're to live and work and play all together, really focusing on some of that deep work and those systems.
Yeah, and it's happening in the spring next year?
Yeah, we have a great travel partner. I lent my expertise to them, I guess you could say. And it's going to be in April, and it leaves out of Miami. It's a 15-night cruise, April 24th through May 8th. And so it goes from Miami to Barcelona. So after we have the 8 days of crossing, we have a couple different stops in Las Palmas, Casablanca, and Valencia.
Oh, Casablanca as well.
Casablanca is really kind of cool because we're trying to get a really cool themed half-shore exploration day, but also a little bit more of some content and how you can apply that while we're in Casablanca, which is really kind of cool. So that is where we're going with that. And this whole thing is meant to be revenue neutral. So we are not charging anything different than the rates that are available from Virgin. I think with the group, we get a discount on those rates, which is great. But our travel advisor partner, the organization that's helping us, manage all of the bookings and all of this, is donating back the commissions that they get from these sailings, so that we can use that to pay for the materials that we're going to have on board with, T-shirt and books and a couple different materials, right? The participant pack and the programming and the logistics of bringing some of our equipment on board, projector and screens in some of the rooms that we have, and for the sessions and doing what we need to do, and then some perks going back to people. So that is kind of where we're going for right now. We're hoping to actually build a sub-community, a private group of people who are coming on board, so we can start that connection before they start sailing, so they get to meet people, and so they already have those friendships and those connections built when they finally meet in person to get on the ship in April. So that's going to be really exciting as well.
Yeah, it's not going to be back-to-back sessions. You can still get some work done.
Yeah. So the way the format is going to go for us is on the sea days, we're going to have sort of one real solid, an hour and a half to 2.5 hour long, workshop breakout session. And then from there, we're going to have either a breakfast, a brunch, or a lunch and learn added every day. We're going to have networking opportunities. We're going to have a couple of evening kind of bonus experience that we're planning out, but we're actually going to have a deep focus lab. And there are several different spaces on board. I mean, the Wi-Fi is plentiful and all over the ship, which is phenomenal.
How good is the Wi-Fi?
Oh, good question. So I have never had issue one with Wi-Fi. Classic Wi-Fi is fine for Wi-Fi calling, which is great. I have zero problems getting any calls on my phone because I have Wi-Fi calling from there. I have no problems browsing the internet, doing audio-only voice calls on my computer. No issues with file transfers, uploading, Instagram, YouTube, whatever you need to uploading those videos. It's where streaming can be a little bit of a challenge on the classic Wi-Fi. Mm-hmm. It really doesn't support it. So if you're going to be doing very heavy video conference calls, those type of things, you'll need to bump up to the next level, which is premium. And you can do that by the day or by the voyage. I think it's very affordable. And if you need a VPN, you do have to go with premium Wi-Fi.
Okay. I feel in the last couple of years, there are so many Nomad events popping up all over the place. Some are there to stay and some just have one event and then they disappear. So what do you say the future of digital nomad events are? Where do you see it going?
I think they're going to be around for a while. I personally believe that we're going to be seeing a shift again back. I know the shift is now happening where it's a lot of return to office for people. A lot of people are having to be location dependent for work, but I think it's going to shift back again in the coming years. I think there is ample space in this environment for all sorts of events that cater differently. A lot of people think when they think of digital nomads, they think of creative freelancers. And, that is what comes to mind for a lot of people and not just remote workers. And, I think you see events being of all different sizes. I think you're going to see events of all different focuses. You might have one that's specifically about building the business of your business or focusing on, a particular niche, whether it's creative or maybe you're a developer or a coder, right? Or maybe you're an engineer or maybe you're an executive or maybe you need to do strat planning. Yeah, I think that the space is going to expand quite a bit. And I think it's going to, I don't want to say branch, like this is a branch, but I think it's going to be a space where it's both the connection, the community of nomads, as well as let's do a cohort and let's have this deep, like a little bit like the deep work focus. And I think people will end up doing both, right? And I think that's where it's going to go. I don't see events going away anytime soon. For as much as people love being a remote worker, a nomad, someone who doesn't have to go to an office, I think we're all we still crave that human interaction and connection. And look for those opportunities to find your tribe and to connect with them, right? And so I think that this is going forward and it's here to stay. And I'm really curious to see where we're going to go now because it's not just, I think about, Virgin flipped the idea of cruising and what it means to do things. And they're very social forward and experience driven. I think a lot of people are looking for socially conscious travel experiences in general, or experience driven, culturally driven, environmentally driven. They're looking for some sort of passion, right? So I could see someone who works for an environmental preservation agency looking to do an event in nomad travel that is, environmentally conscious and carbon offset. I could see anything that's there, like booking and doing travel and combining travel with their particular profession to enhance and deal with that, right? Because why not? It is such an intentional life, and it is such a life being a nomad that will open up and change your perspective and make you a better professional, a better employee, a better empathetic person. When you can go out and you can do these experiences and you can balance your work and your life, and you will work harder and you will play harder and you will experience such a fuller life. I think the direction is going. I think we're just starting with these events.
And where can people learn more about this?
So our travel partner is outofofficetravel.net. They can also reach out to me on my website, william-campbell.com, or send me an email at william@william-campbell.com. We have all the information that's out there. We're happy to talk people through and explain what this really is. We just are looking for a good group of people to come together and work and focus and have fun.
Will, it was a pleasure meeting you, and I hope to see you again, and maybe on the ship.
I hope so too. We'll talk about that soon.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
Bye. This episode was hosted by me, Palle Bo. I also produced it with my production company, radioguru.co.uk. The theme music is created by Divya Shea, aka Divi, the audio nomad.
สวัสดีค่ะ
If you found this episode valuable, make sure to follow the podcast and tell a friend.
No hash
Produced by radioguru.co.uk.